Hello everyone and welcome back to the video. Today we'll be taking a look at the top 5 best cavalry units in Age of Empires 2. I made a video last week and it was about the top 5 best archer units, or specifically foot archer units in the game. And this time we're revisiting a very similar topic. This time I'm going to be talking about cavalry units. And just to make sure that the elite manga die doesn't take every spot on the list, I'm going to limit it to melee cavalry units for this video. The ones with exactly 0 range, so Step Lancer and Mameluke are also going to be put aside for this one. But in the next week's video, I might take a look at cavalry units that also have range, which can include cavalry units and also stuff like Step Lancer and Mameluke. So that said, we're going to be only taking a look at melee cavalry units for this one, but let's go ahead and hop right in and check out the top 5 list. So when it comes to cavalry units, the bread and butter is really the knight, which is going to be a solid, very strong unit sitting at 100 base HP, 10 base attack, and then 2 and 2 when it comes to armor, which is actually insane stats for a unit. And these are all base stats, so you can get up like way higher in terms of, upgrades to the blacksmith, bloodlines, husbandry from the stable. There are a lot of ways to upgrade the knight line further. You can also get cavalier and paladin once you get to imperial age, but really it's going to be the knight in castle age that's going to be the standard, and then in imperial age it'll be the cavalier and the paladin that will be the standard. Remember, any unit on this list has to do something better than the knight to have a spot on the list. Otherwise the knight would just be the one you go for all the time. When it comes to cavalry units though, it's not only about a stat comparison. Because the knight is a very expensive unit, we also have to keep in mind the cost of the units on the list, and we also have to keep in mind some of the special characteristics that they have. For whatever reason, foot archers tend to be mostly about stats, which in the last video was a lot of stat comparison, but when it comes to cavalry, it's a lot about their role in the game and some of their specific capabilities and the special abilities. You'll see what I mean as we go on through the list. So with all that said, let's go ahead and start off with number 5 for real this time. Alright, at number 5, we've got the Shirvamsha Rider. This is the special unit for the Gujaras that actually replaces their knight line. That's right, the Gujaras cannot make knights. So when it comes to cavalry units, you're left with either light cavalry or hussar, or you can go for the camel rider, and they also get access to the camel scouts in feudal age, and you can also go for heavy camel rider in imperial age. But they also have this other unique option, which is the Shirvamsha Rider, replacing the knight line, but not replacing the exact effect of the knight. You see, the knight is an overall, well-rounded, solid cavalry unit that does well in all situations. It's very tanky, it's very strong, it's very mobile, all of what you'd expect from a cavalry unit it's doing. But the Shirvamsha Rider is a little bit different. It's a specialized anti-archer raiding unit which has a very high movement speed and a very low HP. Has relatively medium attack, but its armor is not very impressive upon first glance. Let's take a look at the stats here. So in Castle Age, you've got 55 HP, which is almost half of that of the knight, and you're gonna be sitting at 8 attack, which is 2 less, and 0 melee armor with only 1 pierce armor. Upon first glance, this does not look like it's doing anything in comparison to what a knight can do in Castle Age, and it doesn't even necessarily look like it's anti-archer because it only has 1 pierce armor and very low HP. So where exactly is the anti-archer characteristic coming in from? Well, listen, the cost of a Shirvamsha Rider is 70 food, 30 gold, and with that you get a unit that has the ability to dodge projectiles. And the way this works is that the Shirvamsha Rider has a secondary bar near the HP that is the dodge projectiles bar, for lack of a better word. And the way it works is that you will dodge 5 projectiles, which could be anything from like a Mameluke shot to a Mangonel shot to an archer shot to a town center shot, anything. 1 projectile knocks that down by 1, and it has up to 5 when it is fully charged. The thing is, as you get hit by projectiles, the bar will decrease, but it does recharge on its own slowly over time, and not so slowly, it's actually at a decent rate. So if you get hit by a few projectiles, you would just have to run around a little bit and you'll recharge your bar and you can run back in, making this unit very effective at raiding. And remember, if you're dodging the projectiles, you take 0 damage, not 1 damage. It's not pierce armor, you're taking literally 0 damage. The shots are not affecting you. So it's a very unique quality to have on a raiding unit. And on top of that, the Shirvamsha Rider is so fast. It is the fastest unit in the game besides the Cobra Car, but that's not a real unit. So this is the fastest unit in the game once you get husbandry, which is quite insane. It's super hard to deal with these if they're raiding your base. So overall, I have the Shirvamsha Rider at number 5 because I feel like the stats overall are pretty weak in melee combat. So it's really a specialized anti-archer and a raiding unit, which feels okay, but doesn't 100% fill the role of a knight. So I feel like this is a unit that's very good in certain situations, but then also kind of lackluster in others. And I would say that it's not very good in early castle age against archers because the opponent will likely have like 20 or so archers in early castle age. So if you start massing like 6 to 8 Shravamsha Riders, that's not going to be enough. You will still get 2-shot by the crossbow mass, and because you have low attack and low HP, you will not be able to actually kill the archers. So the Shravamsha Rider is really a late game option when it comes to countering archer units. However, from the start of castle age, it's an excellent raiding unit. Overall, I would say it's a very solid unit. It does its job very well, but it doesn't fulfill all the roles of a knight, so that's why it only gets number 5. Last thing I'll mention is that the elite version of this unit is really crazy. It's very insane because the low gold cost in late game and the very low food cost once you get the unique tech for the Gajaras makes this unit very spammable, and it's obnoxious to deal with. The elite version also gets a +3 attack base increase, which feels very good up against what you'd expect to see in the late game. Only weak against heavy, strong melee units, pretty good against pretty much everything else. Moving on to number 4, we've got a unit that you'd probably not expect to make the list, but it's actually an insane unit now considering how many buffs it's got. It is the War Elephant. The War Elephant, specifically the Elite War Elephant, and I'll get to why in a second, is an absolute powerhouse of a unit. This unit, the stats on it just don't make sense, but of course it's held back by some of his other hidden kind of defects, if you want to say it that way. But let's take a look at the stats first for the shock factor. It has in the Elite version 600 base HP, 20 attack, 1 base melee armor, and 3 base pierce armor, which is exactly the same as a paladin in terms of pierce armor, and it costs 170 food and 85 gold. So very high costs, but very strong stats. Why is the Elite War Elephant up at number 4 when it has such obvious counters like Halberdier and Monk? Well, you see, the War Elephant over the last few months has gotten a lot of buffs. They made the cost lower. The old unique tech Mahouts that you had to research and pay for to make the War Elephant move faster is now completely chopped off, and the same effect is just tied behind the Elite War Elephant upgrade. On top of that, the Elite War Elephant upgrade was made cheaper. So the unit's been made cheaper, the Elite upgrade got better, and it's been made cheaper. And on top of that, in the most recent patch, the monks now take longer to convert War Elephants. +2 seconds minimum, +2 seconds maximum. So the Elite War Elephant is basically just better overall across the board. And so at this point, it's really only weak to certain hard counters like mass monks, halberdiers, and some other unique units like maybe the Mameluke or just random little interactions. But besides that, the War Elephant will destroy pretty much everything else. And although the cost might look pretty high, it's a lot lower than what it was before, which was 200 food and 100 gold. And nowadays, it feels much more affordable. In my opinion, the Elite War Elephant is the only version really worth going for though, because if you think about going for the War Elephant in Castle Age, the standard version, it doesn't really make any sense. It moves very slow. It's very easy to counter 1 or 5 elephants with just a few monks. So the only way to make War Elephants is to go up to Imperial Age, really get a big economy so you can afford many of them. And then if you do that, you might as well get the Elite War Elephant tech, which makes them move faster. So for me, the only viable use of the War Elephant is the Elite version in super late game, and especially in team games where you have the trade to fuel the high gold cost. But honestly, upon testing the War Elephant in a lot of the viewer games that I've been doing on stream where we play ranked games with the viewers, and sometimes I have to carry, have to make up for more than one person on the team if I go for the pocket position. When I go for the Elite War Elephant, it just feels like I'm able to absolutely steamroll people. And you might think that the Halberdier is a huge counter, but it turns out that the Elite War Elephant has such strong stats that it can actually deal quite well against a standard Halberdier. You see, the 20 base stack is actually huge because the Halberdier has 60 base HP. When they get a fully upgraded Halberdier at 3 armor, 20 plus 4, which is the fully upgraded Elite War Elephant, will still deal 21 damage a shot, meaning you 3-hit Halberdiers. This is a very important interaction, one to be well aware of, that if you have a fully upgraded Elite War Elephant, you will 3-shot Halberdiers and you'll get much better trades against them than if you're missing the last attack upgrade, putting you only at 19 damage output versus a fully upgraded Halb. So the fact that you have enough attack to 3-hit a fully upgraded Halberdier when you do get yourself the fully upgraded Elite War Elephant makes them actually very solid against their biggest counter. And now that they got a little bit of a boost, a little bit of a buff against monks, that helped them against their second biggest counter. So really, the Elite War Elephant is doing quite well against his counters. And besides the counters, you really don't have much to worry about. The Elite War Elephant will quite literally destroy everything else in combat. It's also worth noting here that the Persians get access to trash crossbows, meaning crossbows that cost no gold using their commander and technology. So it's very easy to counter both monks and halves using that option. So what was once a meme and a very, fun unit to use in casual games ended up actually being a very competitively viable option in certain situations now that it's gotten a bunch of very practical buffs on it. The Elite War Elephant is not broken, it's just a very strong option to go for in late game. Moving on to number 3, we've got a very strong unit. It's one of those units that feels absolutely fake when you look at the raw stats, but somehow it feels like it's not that broken. Like, it feels like it somehow works, but really what makes it very, very strong is its low cost. And the unit I'm talking about is the lightest. Lightest comes in around 70 food, which is 10 more than a knight, but it costs only 50 gold, which is 25 less than a knight. So pound for pound, so resource for resource, the lightest is cheaper than a knight by 15 overall resources, but the fact that it's 25 gold cheaper is a huge deal, making this unit extremely spammable. But let's take a look at the stats of a fully upgraded Castle Age lightest. You're looking at 13 base attack, plus 2 from forging and iron casting from the blacksmith, and then plus 4 potentially from the relic bonus that Lithuanians get, putting it at a 19 damage cavalry unit in Castle Age. That is absolutely disgusting. But to make matters worse, the lightest does true damage. It ignores armor. So that 19 damage that it's hitting for applies to every single unit it hits. Thank God it doesn't apply to buildings, however. Against buildings, you don't ignore armor, at least. But against units, you're hitting for 19 damage on repeat every single time if you have 4 relics and fully upgraded lightest. That is absolutely ridiculous. That feels like it's completely unfair. And in game, if your opponent gets there, you cannot fight this with pretty much any unit in the game. Even pikeman is not going to cut it. The elite lightest, however, is a little bit lackluster in my opinion, because it gets a really good attack boost with plus 3 attack, plus 30 HP, and plus 1 melee armor. But the problem with the elite lightest is that it stays at the 1 base pierce armor, which is a huge disadvantage in the late game because you're going to be absolutely getting cooked by guys that have a lot of strong ranged unit options, especially cav archers in that late game. So while the lightest in Imperial Age, the elite lightest is a very solid unit and still a great option, for me it's not nearly as strong as its castle version because of how relative your opponent's army will be in terms of strength and pierce damage. So for me, lightest in Castle Age deserve the number 3 spot on the list. Lightest in Imperial Age could deserve the number 3 spot in some situations, but overall kind of get knocked down a little due to their pierce armor deficiency. Overall, still a very fun unit to get to, very, very strong, has a high ceiling because you do need to get those relics to get the full effect. But once you get there, it feels like an absolute powerhouse and just, it feels like a cheat unit. There's no better way to put it. Moving on to number 2 now, we've got a unit that probably flew under the radar when it comes to how most players view it, because it came as a replacement to the Paladin, and this is the Savar. Yet again, another unit for the Persians. The Persians are on a roll for this one, but the Savar came as a Paladin replacement, making a lot of people kind of overlook it a little, because at the end of the day, Paladin itself is a very strong option. So the fact that, you know, now we get Savar for Persians doesn't really seem that crazy. The stat line looks similar to that of a Paladin, so really it doesn't feel that special, but in reality it actually is. The Savar has the exact same cost as a knight, because it is a knight. You go from Cavalier to Savar now instead of going from Cavalier to Paladin. But the best thing about the Savar is that you get extra pierce armor. So the same way we talked about how the lightest has less pierce armor and therefore it's not as good in certain situations in late game, the Savar is the complete opposite. It has 1 extra pierce armor and 1 extra melee armor compared to a Paladin, but the rest of its stats are comparable. It pays for that extra armor by losing 15 HP. The attack remains exactly the same, and I believe the Savar attacks a little bit faster as well, but that's pretty negligible. So the main thing here is that the Savar has 1 and 1 extra armor at the cost of 15 HP. That's the biggest difference. So you might think, okay, well listen, that's not the craziest thing. It's, you know, a little bit of extra tankiness versus archers, nothing too crazy. But the reality of it is, because of that 4 pierce armor, you are taking only 2 damage from an arbalest from your opponent, which means that 165 HP fully upgraded Savar needs over 80 shots to take him out from an arbalest mass. That's an arbalest mass of more than 40, at least more than 40, something like 42, 43, and they need to shoot you twice to kill a single unit. If you're charging in with 30 Savar against that group of 40 Arbalest or 45 Arbalest, and they're trying to 2-hit you, you will just lose 2-3 units as you get in, and as soon as you're on top of them, they will kill maybe 1 extra unit, and that's it. They will lose the entire army because of how tanky you are. But the absolute best quality about the Savar, it's not its proficiency against archers in late game, it's how fast and how cheap the upgrade is. The upgrade comes in a little bit faster than the Paladin upgrade would, and it costs only 1,000 food and 600 gold. Compare that to the standard Paladin tech, which is 1,300 food and 750 gold. You're looking at a whopping 300 food and 150 gold discount. And that is a huge deal when it comes to mid or early Imperial Age power spikes. Persians being able to get the Savar faster than a player can get the Paladin, and having a unit that's stronger than Paladin against archer units is absolutely bonkers. And remember, the Paladin is already an insane unit. Like, it's not a unit that's like decent, it's an insane unit. So the Savar being faster to get to and cheaper and also outperform the Paladin in some ways is ridiculous, and it's a very strong unit that the Persians can really take advantage of. It's not absolutely broken, but it's a very strong unit, and especially for the Persians that get the +2 attacking these archers naturally, it ends up feeling like an extreme archer counter. Before I show you guys number 1 that may or may not be obvious, let's go ahead and take a look at some honorable mentions that I do want to run through. Number 1, we've got the Custodier. The Custodier is a very strong unit that the Burgundians have access to with a charge attack in Castle Age and Imperial Age that basically makes it do a lot of extra damage on its first shot. The Custodier is an amazing unit. It's really strong in raiding, really strong in hitting and running when it comes to fights, and honestly, its stat line overall is solid. It's not like it's really bad in extended trades either. The only reason I don't have it on the list is just because other units are a little bit better in my opinion, but the Custodier is basically number 6 and arguably it can be a little higher depending on the circumstance. I like the Custodier especially because it has a relatively cheap cost at 55 food and 55 gold, so it feels easy to just get to it and start massing it when it comes to the perfect Burgundian strategy. And honestly, it's a very strong and flexible unit that can do a lot more in the hands of a skilled player, so it has a very high ceiling when it comes to how you utilize the charge damage. I think the one thing holding the Custodier back though is that it doesn't have any unique tech associated to it, so once you get the elite upgrade and the blacksmith upgrades, you can't really upgrade it further, and the elite stats are not the craziest, so really it's just a solid unit but nothing too special. And I also want to give a shout out to the Imperial Camel. The Imperial Camel is a very strong camel unit that the Hindustanis have access to. Basically the way it works is instead of the Savar where it replaces the heavy camel upgrade, it just adds on to the heavy camel upgrade. So you have to get heavy camel with Hindustani and then also get Imperial Camel afterwards. I'm not going to go into too much depth here, but I just want to say that the Imperial Camel is absolutely insane as a late game option, and in some cases it feels very unfair to play against. It destroys every other cav unit in the game with very few exceptions, and it's just a strong unit that's good against even non-cavalry options, which makes it a well-rounded powerhouse for the Hindustanis in late game. Very dangerous, especially in those team game scenarios where you have pretty much infinite gold via trade and you're able to just control the game by, controlling the movement of other cavalry units on the map. Moving on to number 1 now, we've got the absolute best cavalry unit in the game that is actually not that broken because it does have some counters, but it's extremely strong. It's the closest thing to broken that we have in the game at the moment when it comes to cavalry, and that is the Georgians' unique unit, the Manaspa. Pretty obvious to anyone who's been playing any kind of 1v1 or team games lately. The Manaspa is an absolutely insane unit stacked onto an absolutely insane civ as the Georgians are, and it gets its strength from so many different things. It's really hard to point out which ones, which are the reasons why the Manaspa is so strong. I would say that it's just a compilation of all of its different qualities. Number 1, it's cheaper than Knight by 30 gold. It costs 60 food and 45 gold, which is absolutely ridiculous. 45 gold on a powerful cavalry unit like this is very strong, and the fact that it's only 60 food compared to the lightest that has 70 food and 50 gold, for example, makes it even easier to afford. It's one of the cheapest unique cavalry units in the game, and it's not really weak to make up for its low cost. It has very good stats: 70 HP, which is on the lower side but still relatively decent, 12 base attack, which is on the very high side, 3 base melee armor, which is on the high side, and 2 pierce armor, which is the standard comparable to a knight. All of these stats are very much solid, so you'd expect, okay, it's a pretty good unit for its cost, but it actually gets better. If you have nearby Manaspa or nearby knights, the Manaspa actually gets stronger. So for example, if you have 6 or 7 Manaspa, you'd get +1 attack. If you have something like 30-35 Manaspa, you will get up to +4 attack on all your Manaspa. So like the lightest, you're basically stacking a lot of attack on already a lot of base attack, making a fully upgraded Manaspa in Castle Age an 18 attack unit, 12 base, +2 from blacksmith upgrades, and +4 from its ability. Absolutely ridiculous. At least it doesn't ignore armor like the lightest does, but it's cheaper, easier to mass, and it's stacked onto a better civ than the lightest. So it ends up feeling way better than the lightest and way more efficient than the lightest. And it's also tankier. Remember that the extra armor definitely does help, and the elite version of the Manaspa does not fall off at all. It has even more attack, even more melee armor, and a little bit more HP, and the upgrade is at a very fair cost. In my opinion, the Manaspa is best in Castle Age, but the elite Manaspa for the Georgian is absolutely insane as well. Oh, and before I forget to mention, this unit also does regenerate HP because this is a Georgian bonus. So not only do you have all of these stats that are absolutely insane and you can stack attack, but you also regenerate HPs, making this unit an absolute nightmare to deal with. I personally believe that it's only only possible to beat the Manasma with direct counter units. This unit is not fair against generic or standard unit lines. You need specific counters, like for example the lightest, which you can ignore its very high melee armor. You need something like the Mameluke, which has a very high attack against it and can kite it out, or you need something like the Elite Mangudai that has really high damage and can kind of play from a backline and pick the Manaspa apart. If you're playing standard units like Knights versus Manaspa and Castlage, you'll get absolutely destroyed and grinded down because their stats are way better and the unit is cheaper and easier to use. So the Manaspa ends up being just a very, very strong unit and very hard unit to deal with. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video on top 5 best cavalry units in the game. If you guys did enjoy this format, let me know what other top 5 videos you want to see in the comments below. And that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want more content from me, check out my Patreon where I have exclusive guides and content, as well as 25 plus build loaders with PDFs and video examples that you can use. The same build loaders, the same strategies that I use, I'm giving out there with example videos, as well as a ton of other exclusive perks like a Discord where you can ask me an Age of Empires question around the clock 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, anytime you want, and I'll be there to answer and to chat with you, and plenty of other videos that are meant to help you guys get better at the game and understand the game at a higher level. And besides the Patreon, you also have my Twitch for the live streams. Link to both Twitch and Patreon in the description below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.